Hey friend, before we get back into the episode, I want to offer you something that might deeply support you right now. If you've been feeling stretched thin, if you're carrying that familiar fundraising anxiety, or if you're craving a moment to step out of the pressure and reconnect to yourself, I'd love to invite you into a brave and balanced breakthrough session. This is a live one-on-one coaching session tailored specifically to you. As a certified coach and former fundraiser, I work with you beneath the level of surface level mindset tools into the somatic and emotional patterns that shape how you show up, what you believe is possible, and ultimately the results you create. Most fundraisers walk away from this session feeling clearer, steadier, and more able to raise money with ease and freedom. Not because they changed their strategy, but because they got out of their own way and reconnected to their internal source of strength. Right now, this session is $97, and the price will be going up in the coming months. So if you've been thinking, I should do this at some point, let this be your gentle nudge to take action. You can book your session through the link in the show notes, and if something in you feels pulled toward this, trust it. That inner tug is your wisdom speaking. All right, let's get back into the episode. Welcome to the Brave and Balanced Fundraiser, the podcast I wish I'd had during my 15 years as a professional fundraiser. I'm your host, Erin McQuaid-Wright. This is your space to breathe, realign, and reconnect with the part of you that chose this work for a reason. Together, we'll explore tools and practices that help you show up less stressed and spread thin, and more grounded, brave, and on purpose. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I share on this podcast the tools and the techniques that helped me live more authentically and with more ease, going from fundraising and being really pressed and stressed and overwhelmed to living a life that is more, it feels like me. And one of the ways that I've done that is by working with plants. And I really mean it when I say that plants have helped me heal in my life and show up in a more brave and balanced way. And if you're wondering what herbalism has to do with fundraising or leadership, I simply say, every episode of this podcast is about helping us show up from a more grounded and brave and balanced place. So today I'm sharing one of the unexpected teachers that helped me do exactly that. So that's what today's episode is about. I hope that excites you and you're wanting to lean in to hear more. Sometimes the way we work every day is a mindset game. And sometimes it's an emotional game. Sometimes it's deep. And sometimes we need a little help from our friends. And in March of 2020, I became really ill. And I watched the news reports in my city about hospitals being full and at their maximum capacity, about people dying, about not enough respirators to go around. And I was sitting in my house, unable to breathe. I reached into the way back, the darkest corner of a drawer, and found an emergency inhaler that had been prescribed to me and was expired about a year earlier. You see, I had grown up with asthma, and that was something that I needed to have on me at all times because I never knew when an asthma attack was going to come. And since moving to the South, maybe the difference in plants or something else changed it, and I didn't need that anymore. I was able to breathe all the time without difficulties. But in this instance, having been sick, having very little information about what could be done, I knew to reach for that inhaler. And I'll tell you what, I used it up, and it might have been expired, but it had enough medicine to keep me going and to keep me from having to go to the hospital. And that was a win for me. And I also did the thing that a lot of people did. I went to Google and typed in, what are the plants I can take to boost my immune system? And I learned about this farmer in Massachusetts who was making elderberry syrup. And it was supposed to be this great immune boosting thing that you could take. And you take a tablespoon a day and you keep it moving. You build up your own body's natural defenses so you don't get sick. And I was already sick, but I was looking for solutions, and I was open to a lot of different ideas. And I think that bottle of elderberry syrup was something like $40. It was expensive. And I also knew that there was an elderberry plant on my block and that it was a bush. I think I had had a plant-loving relative come to town, and he had pointed it out to me. So I knew this plant existed. It was in my reach. It grew in my region. But I had no idea how to make medicine with it. And I didn't know their names, but I knew there were people in my lineage who knew how to work with plants, with elderberry, elderflower, the elder tree, and a whole host of other plants. I knew that technology had been dropped from the stories of my family, and I felt like that was a real loss. And it was something that I wanted to pick up again and piece together so that I could take the best care I could take of me and my family in very uncertain times. So I enrolled in a course online, and I was so excited to learn about plants. And I learned so much. I got a certification, and it took about 9 months or so. And I did that while I was fundraising, nights and weekends. I learned what I could about working with plants. And then a few years later, I decided to take another certification from a different teacher, a very different approach than the first one, but I learned so much there as well. And I learned how to make things like elderberry syrup and tinctures and infused oils. I learned how to make all kinds of herbal preparations. And I learned the Latin names for plants, even though I didn't memorize most of them. I learned them. My favorite part was the special properties, which in Ayurveda technology they call the prabhava. It's like the spiritual properties of a plant. So going beyond this plant will help your gallbladder produce more bile. That's a very straightforward approach, very direct. This is a more mystical approach. And I was taught that plants have certain spiritual properties as well. And one that I always remembered was mullein, which some people say is a pest. But it's got these really broad leaves that are right down against the ground. They're very fuzzy. They have these little hairs on them. And then it grows this long, tall stalk, taller than a petite person like me, but maybe a little shorter than the average height of a person. And it grows this long stalk with all these little yellow flowers on it. And one of my teachers told me one day that the special property of the mullein plant is that taking a tincture of these flowers helps you get okay with being seen, because Mullen has such a high profile. It is so living loud and proud, tall as it wants to be, and you can't help but notice it. And so that's an example of a special property that I thought was really interesting. When I give talks these days, I sometimes add in talking about plants. I'm teaching people about self-care, about how to honor that small voice within that is actually pointing to our alignment. And I think what I'm hearing from people time and time again is that we're longing for something. And often my belief is what we're longing for is actually ourself, because we keep going to see what other people need. We keep going to put our energy into what the news is saying or what someone's saying about this person or that politician. And we have so much outward pouring of our energy that we can actually miss ourselves, and that coming home to a more peaceful, a more quiet way of being with ourselves. And for me, plants are a part of coming back to myself. Now, my ancestors came from Ireland and England, but no matter where we come from in the world, if we go back far enough, we find people who lived very closely to the land, who worked with plants and understood how to talk with them and hear back from them about their properties and how they could help. They learned how to read what a plant could be helpful for in the human body. And they got downloads about the special medicine that these plants offered. And we've kind of gotten away from that. And I think modern medicine is great and has its place. And let's not forget that when I needed it most, I was able to reach into the back of that dark cabinet and find that inhaler that really saved me a lot of trouble and saved me from having to take up a hospital bed and maybe get even sicker. So I'm all for that. But I also believe that there's a sovereignty that people are often feeling a longing for. And that looks like sometimes growing our own food. It looks like being able to heal, do our own first aid at home, and being able to just be smart about like eating healthfully and also knowing what to do for ourselves and for our families when we're feeling a little under the weather. Not an emergency situation, not a hospital situation, but just like feeling like we need some extra support and being able to work with plants to be able to bring that extra support. I grew up in an era where modern medicine was king and herbal remedies were not known and they were few and far between. I grew up in an old stone farmhouse in Pennsylvania, and in the summertime we always had iced tea for dinner and sometimes lunchtime drinks or drinks throughout the day. We had one of those 70s glass yellow pitchers that we would drink from, and my mom used to make it. She used to use our big stew pot and make iced tea, and she would say, "Erin, go out and cut me some mint." And around the corner of the farmhouse by our basement doors was this patch of mint, and it was so beautiful. It would grow mint in the summer and lilies of the valley in the spring, and it was just so lovely to be there. And I remember taking my little orange-handled scissors and going and cutting some mint, and I would bring it in to Mom, and she would drop it in the pot with a couple of Lipton tea bags, and she would let it steep. And we had the most beautiful mint tea to drink. I noticed that in the wintertime, my parents always had a cup of tea with dinner, some kind of tea, celestial seasonings, Lipton. They would have a tea bag of, for herbal tea when they would drink their dinner. But for me, that's pretty much where it ended. We used medications when we got sick, and like even folk medicine like Coke with the bubbles stirred out to settle our stomach. I don't know if any of you had that, but that was a standby in my house. I never drank soda. So it was like kind of a very different thing to drink just the syrup differently than most people experience soda, but that was my experience of soda. So it was really interesting to me to be able to pick up the lost knowledge of tea and to be able to see how it might fit into my life today. I'm going to read you my short list of teas and how you can work with them. And I hope this is fun for you and that you might be able to take this and make something beautiful to enjoy in your life. When it comes to buying herbs, I like to buy from shops like Pen Herb, and I'll put the link in the description. I don't have a relationship with them. And I also, if any of you are feeling like you might want to grow your own medicinal herbs, you can do that too. There's a company called Strictly Medicinals. I'm just a fan. They don't support my show. But Strictly Medicinals and Pen Herb are some good places to start if you want to grow or buy the already dried herbs. So here's my list of plants I like to work with. Okay, first up, chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla. Many of you have probably heard about chamomile before. It's a very common tea, and my herbal teacher told me that is the tea you reach for a cranky child or for an adult who's acting like a cranky child. Sometimes that's me, and I'm reaching for the chamomile to soothe my nervous system and help me relax. It calms the nervous system. It also soothes the gut. It supports sleep and reduces anxiety. The only contraindication is you want to avoid it if you are allergic to ragweed because it's in the same family. Herb number 2, lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. Lemon balm is in the mint family, and it's really, you can tell because it has a square stem, just like the mint plant does. And it's just this most beautiful cross between mint and kind of basil. It lifts the mood, it reduces cortisol, it promotes general alertness and calm, and it supports digestion. Number 3, we have holy basil, which is also called tulsi. And that's oxymum gratissimum. It balances cortisol, it supports clarity and calm. It's supportive when you're feeling wired but tired. That feeling of, I'm in bed, I should be sleeping, but I'm feeling really wired. Tulsi, holy basil, is a great plant ally for that condition. Check with your doctor if you could be pregnant before working with holy basil. And then lavender, Lavandula angustifolia. It soothes the nerves, it supports rest and emotional balance. And because we normally associate the smell of lavender with detergents and soaps, you're going to want to go super easy on this in your tea. Otherwise, it could feel like you're eating a bar of soap or drinking some laundry detergent, and we don't want that overpowering taste of lavender on the tongue. You could just use a 1/4 teaspoon or less in your tea. So let's talk about preparation for these herbs. Ideally, you want to use organic loose leaf teas that you buy dried, and you can steep a teaspoon of the dried herb for 5 minutes for a really light, refreshing cup of tea for 20 minutes if you want a stronger cup of tea. And then you can use a whole tablespoon if you want a medicinal dose, right? And when you pour the hot water over your tea, you want to cover it, because what makes it smell really good are the volatile oils. They can actually escape in the steam and you lose that taste. So you want to pour the hot water over the dried herb and then let it sit covered. Another way that I really like to prepare herbs and work with them is to make a bath tea. And this is a really beautiful way of incorporating herbs in your life, which you can actually take in through your skin. You don't have to drink them and consume them in that specific way. The skin is porous and it takes in the medicine that we soak it in. So number one, that's really good to know as you buy your skincare products. Don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't want in your mouth, because your skin is able to absorb what you take in. So the way that I like to make a bath tea is I like to use a French press that is specifically for tea. There's never been any coffee in my French press. I use it specifically for tea, and I put in at least an ounce of the dried herb. I might use tulsi and rose and lavender together. The ones that smell really good to my nose are going to feel really good to me in the bath, and that can be a nice little exercise in following our intuition. You know, what smells good to me today? What is jumping out at me today? And if you've got the dried herbs in bulk, like I mentioned, you can drop some of them into your French press. You can pour your boiling water over it. You can put the lid on and just let it sit. And I like to do that for like 4 hours, especially on a winter's day when I'm knowing I'm going to have a nice soak in the evening. I'll let it sit for 4 hours or more. I fill up my bathtub. I put in some Epsom salts, maybe a drizzle of an infused lavender oil that I've made, and then I press down the plunger on my French press and get all that nice tea, all the plant material out at the bottom of the French press, and then I pour the herbal tea into the bath, and I'll say a prayer of what I am intending with this bath, what I am drawing to me in this bath, what I am leaving behind as I step into the water. And that herbal bath is a luxurious way to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes just grounding, exhaling, and really I like to do it as distraction-free as possible, without devices, and just allow the tea to be absorbed into your body, the principles of those herbs, the calming nature of them to be absorbed. And because you strained out the plant material and it's still in the bottom of the French press, but when you let the water out at the end, it makes cleanup much easier, because it's just the strained tea that's going down the drain and not any of the plant materials. So I hope this is helpful for you. I hope you are inspired to have a cup of tea at the very least, and to get curious about the plants that are growing around you, about what they have to teach you, and how you might be able to have more calm in your life, more balance, and more deep rest, so that you can be refreshed to meet the next day and do what you need to do to have success in your life. Thanks so much for being here.